nicely put. We've got a good paper before us as well to help inform our decision here today. I'm happy to take questions, members, and for some reason I've just lost the chat bar. Now I can see it again. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this motion before us, please?
Happy to move.
Okay.
This.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor moving, and second from?
I'll second, Angela.
Councillor Dalton, thank you. It's moved and seconded. Any questions, members? There being none, I will put the motion to the vote. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Noel. All those in favour of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. To the contrary, no, and declare that motion carried. Thank you, members. Again, thank you, Anna, for your work.
Thank you.
Members, now we will go to item 10. Item 10 is on page 69 of your agenda, headed the application of the new policy from government. It's policy 3D specifically of the National Policy Statement on Urban Development, and a change that was brought about there that we are required to respond to.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, you've skipped item 9.
Oh, have I?
Yeah.
Sorry. I will go back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I'll go back to 9. And item 9 is page 33. And this is Auckland Council's submission on the National Environmental Standards for drinking water. This one is going to be reported to us by Dave Allen, Manager of the Natural Environment Strategy Unit, and Simon Fraser in the same unit. We're being asked to approve a draft submission here on the proposed amendments to the National Environmental Standards on drinking water, and also to delegate members to approve a separate submission to Taumata Arawai, and that's also related to drinking water standards. So I will now hand over to, I think, Dave or Simon to lead, please. Is it Simon?
Simon to lead. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have a short presentation here, which I will put up on screen for you all. No, that's not. Sorry. Yeah. Is it showing up on the screen properly there?
We have it, but it's not full screen. It's coming up now. It's full screen.
Yeah, technical problem solved. Sorry about that. So good morning, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about a proposed submission on amendments to the National Environment Standards for the sources of human drinking water. So just brief presentation, we'll just run you through the report and the purpose of these regulations, just walk you through our staff advice and the next steps, and finish on the decisions sought for the paper in front of you. Introduction to the report. So there's 2 sets of regulations currently out for public consultation from central government at the moment relating to drinking water. First of these is amendments to the National Environmental Standards for Sources of Human Drinking Water, which is regulations under Resource Management Act, amending the 2007 NES for Sources for Human Drinking Water. Consultation on this closes on the 6th of March, so a few days' time. It's managed by the Ministry for the Environment, a set of regulations. And then alongside that, Taumata Arawai consulting on a package of 6 technical drinking water standards, which are under the Water Services Act. These are on a slightly longer time frame, with the consultation closing for these on the 28th of March. The purpose of the NES for protection of sources of human drinking water, it's focusing on managing the land use activities around drinking water sources to protect those from risks to human health and affecting the drinking water. 3 parts to the proposed amendments. So the first part is how at-risk source water areas are delineated, so establishing layers of what are being called source water risk management areas around drinking water sources, and different layers of protection for how activities are managed in those areas which may affect the quality of the drinking water source. Second part is how activities within each of those areas are managed or regulated. And then the third part is expanding the requirements of the NES for drinking water to cover all registered water suppliers, so lining up with the new definition of registered water suppliers under the Water Services Act. This set of regulations is very much focused on the first phase of the multiple barrier approach to address risks for contamination of drinking water, which was put forward by the Havelock North inquiry. So just as a reminder, those layers of protection are protecting water at source, effective treatment where required, secure distribution, effective monitoring, and then effective responses to incidents and events. And the second lot of regulations, technical drinking water standards. So these are technical content for drinking water suppliers, which guide how drinking water is treated and supplied safely. And there are 6 instruments under the Water Services Act. So the drinking water standards relate to the composition of drinking water and cover minimum and maximum amounts of substances which may be present in drinking water. Quality assurance rules, which guide drinking water suppliers on what they need to do to demonstrate compliance with drinking water standards. Drinking water acidic value, so this has been separated out from the drinking water standards previously, and this is specific determinants around aesthetic properties to drinking water, so taste, odour, appearance and feel. 3 acceptable solution standards, so providing drinking water suppliers with ready-made options to meet compliance obligations for roof water, spring and bore water, and rural agricultural water supplies. And then the last one is the network environmental performance measures, so how water networks and their impacts on the environment are operated on behalf of councils and government departments. How these regulations interact. So this diagram here is from the NES drinking water discussion document, and you'll see in the first part of that system, the NES drinking water highlighted there, very much focusing at the start of drinking water supply system, focusing on managing the activities around drinking water sources. And then the technical drinking water standards very much come in that second part there, where the focus is on the drinking water suppliers and how water is treated and then supplied to consumers. This other diagram is also from the discussion document, highlighting the roles and responsibilities of the main actors within the NES drinking water, but also does kind of apply to the technical standards as well. So for us as Auckland Council, and our regional council responsibilities, we have responsibilities to impose conditions and monitor compliance on resource users for consents under the Resource Management Act. Obligations to work with water suppliers around providing information on catchment risks, and water suppliers will then also supply information back to us and highlight any issues from their end for the drinking water suppliers. And then obligations on us to report source water information to Taumata Arawai, and Taumata Arawai to also supply information back to us on registered suppliers and source water data which they hold. So both of those are responsibilities under the Water Services Act. So our staff advice on the NES drinking water, so this is the draft submission which is attached to the report. So generally supportive of the proposed amendments to protect drinking water sources. We recognise the need that there's the national level need to lift drinking water standards and implement the multiple barrier approach, and is highlighted by the Havelock North inquiry. And the proposed amendments are very much bringing the current NES drinking water into line with other recent or ongoing regulatory reforms related to drinking water. So, for example, the Essential Freshwater Package and the MPSFM. So, aligning with Te Mano Te Wai and the hierarchy of obligations there for putting the health of the environment at the top of managing fresh water, and then the health of the water for human use, and then aligning also with the Water Services Act, and also ties in with the Resource Management Act and Free Waters reforms as well. Initial advice on the technical drinking water standards. So we are still looking at these and looking at them more in depth, but our initial advice is very much there's no major red flags here, and generally supportive of the requirements as presented. Some minor effects on large drinking water suppliers, such as water care, for example, with some increased monitoring, lab testing requirements and reporting requirements. We do note that the largest impact will be likely on small drinking water suppliers who are going to need increased access to technical expertise to meet the higher standards, and the overall impact of the cost for the increased monitoring, testing and reporting is going to hit the smaller drinking water suppliers harder, as just economies of scale, the impacts are going to be more significant for them. Then we also have some detailed concerns around a few items within the standards, some tight reporting timeframes. So it's currently proposed for a 10-day turnaround for annual data, which is very tight for reporting a whole year's worth of data. So recommending that is extended. Collection of economic performance data before the economic regulation requirements under the Three Waters reform is in place. Some concerns there that the information may not line up. It's hard to, I guess, make sure the information collected is going to line up with the new economic regulation, which is expected. And then some of the rules within the standards are very broad wording, so some recommendations there around refining or additional formal guidance on what is meant within those standards. So the decisions we are seeking from you today as the Planning Committee is to approve the draft submission attached. Again, noting the consultation closes on 6th of March. So there is an opportunity to make some minor amendments based on discussions at today's meeting. And then delegation to approve offline an additional submission to Te Mata Arawai on the technical drinking water standards, just noting that those close in on the 28th of March. So we are still assessing these, but just walk through the initial advice on those. So that's the end of the presentation on the report. So I'll hand back over to you, Chair, and for any discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for your work. Dave too, your whole team that's been working on this. Very important. I will go to member Tau Henare first, please. Welcome, Tau.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you. Just I suppose an issue that I have with the Māori impact statement, and that is that if I read it properly, a submission was made and then it was sent out to Mana Whenua. Is that right?
So we contacted Mana Whenua a few weeks ago now, asking if, well, first of all, highlighting the opportunity for them to, if they decide to submit themselves directly on these on the NES drinking water, but also if they wanted to make their views known to us to include within our submission if they preferred to do it that way.
So how did you contact them? Was it by email or
It was by email through so we have a contacts list which we use regularly. We received some responses saying thank you, but nothing to offer, but no formal input was received from Mana Whenua through that.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Henry. And we will now go to the Mayor, please. Mayor Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Simon, for your presentation. Look, my question's in relation to the Taumata Arawai standards. I take it from your presentation that that's not going to have much of an impact at all on water care because there are only minor things about monitoring and lab testing there. My question is really about the impact on small drinking water suppliers. Now, you're not talking about people there that have their own tank supply, but you're talking about people who provide water to others for a commercial return. How far away are they from the standards that are required, and what happens if they aren't able to meet the cost of raising their standards?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. So just to start as a reminder for all members on the call that the Water Services Act amendments last year expanded the definition of a drinking water supplier to cover all suppliers which are providing drinking water to more than one household. So it does not include single self-suppliers within that definition. So under the Water Services Act currently, as written, the obligation to step in and take over control of those smaller suppliers if the current operator decides to walk away and not meet those standards does currently sit with councils. But we would expect as part of the Three Waters reforms that responsibility would move to the water services entities if that goes ahead.
Perhaps
Just a supplementary on that one, if I may. The Three Waters, if it comes into effect at all, doesn't come into effect until 2024. So I presume that we'd have to pick this up in the meantime. And it's kind of curious that it falls on us when we're not the provider of the water supply and we don't provide it more, Watercare provides it more widely. What sort of costs are you anticipating that might impose, and how will they be met?
At this stage, it's hard to know what the exact cost would be. With the expansion of the definition of drinking water suppliers, previously unregistered suppliers have until 2024 as well to register with Taumata Arawai. So we estimate there's probably about another 80 drinking water suppliers across the region, which would be captured by that. But we also know, and this is also noted in the discussion document, that number is likely to be very underestimated. So until that 2024 date arrives and all those suppliers are registered, it is hard to know exactly how many additional drinking water suppliers there are across the region. It would be on a case-by-case basis on those drinking water suppliers, how the council would work with those suppliers to help them bring them up to standards. There is, as part of the Three Waters reform, some additional funding that has been set aside for smaller suppliers to meet the additional costs as part of the Three Waters and drinking water reforms in general. So it is, I've got it in front of me just here, it was about $30 million set aside in total for assisting smaller drinking water suppliers. A proportion of that, I think it was 18 million, was set aside for Marae suppliers specifically. So there is additional funding there with central government support to help those drinking water suppliers come up to standard as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I will go to the Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Simon. Thanks, Dave. I very much the same question as the Mayor. Actually, you've just covered off. My other one was about rural marae. what happens, and do we hold data on the places that there is a centralised tank service that actually might provide water for us, half a dozen houses or even 3? From my reading of this, it's where they are captured, but do we have the data that those systems exist? And what happens then if the person who has the centralised tank system, their property just says, right, I'm not going to do it, and there'll be houses there with no water systems, but they'll have to put tanks and filtration systems in. So is that all covered off in this?
Yeah, I think a lot, as you just mentioned, Councillor Cashmore, a lot of it, with the previous answer, there's additional funding available to help those smaller suppliers if needed from central government. We don't, and as mentioned, we don't have a full data set of all the drinking water suppliers, given that extra time frame of 2024 for additional previously unregistered drinking water suppliers to register with Taumata ROI. So we wouldn't have a full set of data until 2024 on that.
Okay, there's 30 million set aside for that. I think, well, mine serves me correct, Dave, there was like 170,000 of these sort of little tiny suppliers around the country. Is that correct? Or something? What was that number?
Yeah, across the country, roughly that number was the estimate, and we estimate there's another 80 or so across the Auckland region. But that is a low number, but we expect that would be higher.
Yeah, the estimates are still, just more broadly speaking, the estimates are still unknown, and it will be through the process of registration over the next 4 years for those previously unregistered water suppliers that we're obviously going to get a bit of a handle nationally on the scope of the drinking water suppliers that are out there. One thing I just wanted to observe as well is that the standards are graduated proportionately, so that for very small suppliers, the requirements for treatment are less than the requirements for the larger water suppliers. So there is a graduated sort of set of conditions or requirements for the very small and small drinking water suppliers compared to the large, and so that sort of hopefully will address the issue of the amount of risk that's involved for those smaller populations that are served by those drinking water suppliers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the information. I guess time will tell, but 30 million mightn't go very far in this situation. New Zealand, not a big problem for Auckland, but a potential in other places around the country are massive imposition. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. So, Simon, we've got some time to consider our feedback on Taumata Arawai, and that there are a number of questions there from both the Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and I also was thinking the same on the impact on small suppliers beyond a single household, and the Deputy Mayor's referred to rural marae. I'm thinking possibly Papakainga developments and co-house developments and other smart developments where they are wise enough to see that there is value in localised water supply systems. And I think it's going to be really important that we keep an eye out for not making it onerous on such smart developments. We haven't been good in Auckland in looking out for those solutions in the past. Watercare in the past has certainly not had an appetite for that. It's changing, which is good. Water strategy is helping in that regard. But I would hope that we just pay some attention to the graduated response, and to ensure at that local level we make it we ensure that there's healthy water supplies, but easy to supply those healthy water supplies. So I'm sure, Simon, I know that your team is well abreast of that and got its eye on that as an outcome. So look forward to seeing that wording. Okay, I've got no further questions. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, you asked the questions. Would you like to move in second, please?
Happy to second. Chris, let the big boss do the moving, I guess.
Mayor Phil, you're up for moving. Okay, Mayor Phil, might
happy to move it. Sorry, I was having trouble with my mic.
Okay, good. It's moved and seconded. There's no further questions. Just checking. Okay, we'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour say aye.
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 To the contrary, no, and declare that carried. Thank you, Simon, for your work, and thank you, Dave. Okay, we will now go to item 10.